I'm just coming out of 2.5 days of not talking. So this is the first time that I'm finding my voice, and it's rather strange, to be honest. But I want to take this experience and talk about being alone on one's own. Also, the difference between being alone and feeling lonely, because they're two very different things. And I want to speak specifically to being single, which can pertain to both women and men, but what women gain from being on their own and being single the most, more than men actually. So let's dive in. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So I want to begin by just saying how absolutely exquisite it was to take these days of silence. I actually didn't want to come out of it, but I felt my dedication to putting out this episode, whomever listens to it, I just wanted to get it out on time. But I so highly recommend it. I know it's not always easy. For me, it certainly isn't, because I'm a single mother, but I have some time to myself after 2.5 months. And so, yeah, it's been just so delicious. It's the best word I can use, to just have this time and space for myself and to choose to go into silence. And by going into silence, I mean not talking, not listening to anything, not watching anything, not being on my phone, not listening or responding to messages. I spent time sleeping, resting, meditating, reading, just being, like looking out the window and watching the birds and watching the clouds move, and time slows down and it's so beautiful. And as you sink in to just the quietness of your being, I describe it as like my entire inside just felt like a warm bath. It was so nourishing. And on the second day, I decided to take a walk, and I did put in classical music, which I haven't listened to in so long. I put it in my headphones so it would just drown out the kind of urban noises of cars and buses and construction that was kind of dotted along the way as I walked from my apartment to the sea, when I could finally get to the silence of the sea. And it was just beautiful. I felt like I was in my own little microcosm and just really connecting to myself. And this is off the back of, obviously, many months of just going on. I did have the Christmas break, but I still was, not full. I didn't have any time fully on my own. But, just my daily life and my daily routine is quite full on, with the amount of driving and everything that I have to do as a mother and a, entrepreneur, whatever, sole proprietor, all of these things. And there was something that actually happened on Saturday morning as I was transitioning. I chose to kind of go into silence the next day, but I got really triggered by something. And it brought me to a place that I actually very, very rarely go to, which is shame. And almost this feeling of feeling and being pathetic. And this is not the topic of this episode, but I want to touch upon it because it just brought up all of this emotion, and it had to do with something in my past that, I feel like was a bit unjust, and clearly haven't resolved it yet. And it was interesting that it kind of triggered that, because like I said, I don't go to those places. I don't go into comparison, because I know that it just only causes suffering. And there really is no point in comparing, because no two people and no two lives, no two paths are exactly the same, nor should they be. And I don't often go into patheticness or pity or shame, because I've been in my internal world for many decades now and learned the art of just love and acceptance and non-judgment. But it came up no less. And I felt it and I sat with it. And then luckily, because I had the time, I moved into my creativity, into dancing and creating a video. And my creativity is always such a healing point for me. It's cathartic, it allows the energy to move through me, not as an escape, but as a transmutation of the energy, whilst, of course, I'm processing it all. And so it felt really right just to finally have time on my own. And after having this kind of big emotional trigger, to just be in silence with myself. And I recognized that it's like everything that was being triggered and what I was comparing myself to was a measure of society. And I've always known that I did not come to this planet to be a part of society in the normal way. I came to change it. And maybe that sounds like grandiose, but what I mean is I feel like my mission here, and what I'm recognizing is I thought that it would come out in this, like what I was told when I was 15, that you're going to affect the masses, you're going to be hugely successful in this and that and the other, whatever you do. And I don't feel like that's not what's really manifested. And yet, when I look at what has my mission been that I've known since I was 4 years old, it was to have a positive effect on humanity. And so even if I'm doing that in small ways where it's a ripple effect by affecting one person and they affect another person and they affect another person, that does create mass change. It just might not be in the big mega way that my mind perceived it would be, especially having been, professional ballet dancer where you're performing in front of thousands. There is this, this stage, pardon the pun, that you feel like you have to communicate to the masses, to the thousands upon thousands. And actually, maybe we create the most shift and change and influence when we just simply be who we are. Now, what has allowed me to drop into that place is so much time on my own. So much time. My 20s, I have had lots of relationships, long-term relationships. But on the outskirts of those relationships, and even within them, there was the ability to still connect with myself and take myself into nature and all of these things. But on the outskirts of these relationships, especially my teenage years, and then when I came out of my first relationship, I must have been around, 21, 22, and spent a lot of time with myself, inside myself, meditating, reading, reflecting. And it's been a theme, and I've had really good friends in my life, but not, let's just say quality over quantity. But I reflect back and go, God, I've spent so much time on my own, literally just, even as a child, having, a more kind of wounded memory of being left alone in rooms by myself. But if I see the silver lining in everything, it's that what it was, grooming me for was the art of being alone, not in a lonely way, not in a lacking of something way. Now, don't get me wrong. Have I felt moments of loneliness? Absolutely. Have I had moments of just being so fed up of just like, I'm done doing this life alone? Yeah, I had it last Thursday. Do I get angry sometimes? And I've gone through a period right now where I came out of a relationship and, really, this was several years ago, but really wanting to be in the relationship that I feel like I've been calling in since I was 28 years old. And in that time, I was married, I was in a relationship for nearly 10 years and then had some time on my own and then went into another relationship that wasn't really meant to be a relationship, but it became one. But all the while knowing really what I was calling in and somehow not exactly calling in that, but I don't ever see relationships as failure. I don't believe that if they don't last a lifetime that they're a failure. I believe that there's often contracts, soul contracts, karmic agreements, soul lessons, It's never black and white. And so I look back on my life and I look at my relationships and the time in between where I really processed and integrated and evolved through them, as all of it was such massive spiritual teaching. And I don't think it would have been as much if I didn't have the times in between where I was alone and on my own and really getting to learn about myself, getting to know myself, really exploring and discovering and healing and expanding and going through the contraction and expansion and going into the wound and pulling out the thorn and stopping the bleed and really asking the question, who am I? Who am I without the identity of being a dancer, of being an actress, of being a choreographer, of being a teacher, of being a wife, of being a mother, of being a coach, of being a writer, of all of these things. But who am I on a deeper level, and who and what is the essence of who I am? And how do I get to just be me? And I was reading, I woke up in the middle of the night because I went to sleep so early last night. There's a beauty when you're not on your phone and you're in quiet and stillness. Like your body's like, okay, it's time for sleep now. So you get a lot more rest. But I did wake up in the middle of the night and I was reading The Gene Keys. I'm slowly reading that book. And Richard Rudd is just such a beautiful mystic poet in my mind. He's just so beautiful. What a beautiful being he is, that really speaks from heart and soul and wisdom rather than knowledge. Has a wealth of knowledge, but speaks through knowing, which to me is an evolved being, when one can speak through knowing and not through knowledge. But he was talking about how one of the gene keys, the 10th gene key, is being, the gift of the 10th gene key, which is self-obsession, is the shadow. The gift is naturalness, I think it is. And I forget the city. I think it's, there's always an evolution. There's like a progression. But forgive me, I was reading in the middle of the night, so I don't remember exactly what it was. But what I wanted to speak to was the gift. And the gift was naturalness, of just being natural. That to me is what authenticity is just be natural, just be you, just be of your nature and of higher divine nature and of earthly nature. And he was saying that, when we were more kind of the animal kingdom, before our brain developed, we were natural. But then the moment our brain developed, we began to self-reflect and we began to ask ourselves this question, well, who am I? What am I doing here? What's the meaning of being here? What's the purpose of being here? What's my purpose of being here? What is this all about? And I think now more than ever, it's like, yeah, really, what the hell is this all about? So there's the shadow and the light, two sides of the same coin of, it's amazing that we were able to begin to self-reflect because it brought our consciousness online. And at the same time, also has created a lot of suffering and tension within ourselves, because there is this, who am I? This endless question. And then the structure of a society that is pulling you constantly away from who you are, constantly away from your true inner nature and your divine nature and your earthly nature, pulling you away from nature and earth herself. And so now I think after so many thousands of years of being pulled away from ourselves, we're coming back into this, well, all of that jazz has left us feeling very purposeless and meaningless and, really like trying to be someone that which we are not. And the gift of naturalness is that, and I love this, he talks about this paradox, which I 100% agree on. You have to go seek who you are, the identity of who you are, your personality. So I had to go find, who is Corinne, right? Who is the personality of Corinne? In order to recognize your true nature and let all of that go. Now, when I say let all of that go, I'm not a believer of like, let go of your ego, let go of your personality and just be some like invisible blob that, floats through the air like plasma or whatever. I believe that the ego is actually important, but a healthy relationship to the ego, a healthy relationship to your personality is really important, because without it, there wouldn't be that union of soul and human. and the trinity that is created between soul, human, and divine consciousness. And without those, we wouldn't be able to have this experience. We wouldn't have this existence. We wouldn't be in this game simulation where we're learning and growing and expanding and evolving, or just being. We're just like, okay, this is what this is. You know, when you really strip everything back, you need all of those things to strip down into the naturalness of just who you fundamentally are, both as spirit and as flesh. And both are important, both are needed. So that naturalness of just, the moment that you, I say the moment, it doesn't happen in one moment, but when you land upon, I don't mean, I'm consciously choosing my words, because I don't want to say discovering, finding who you are, but landing upon who you've always been, and the knowing and the knowledge and the wisdom of the gnosis of who you are. When you land upon that and you fall into your lap in that way, you let go of the judgment, you let go of the needing to be something, the striving, the shoulds, the pretending, the facades, the masks, even the self-improvement, I need to become better. No, it's the unfurling and unfolding of the fern, of the rose, of the petals, of the blossom. It's always an expansion that can only happen by relaxing. And that's the thing, is when we drop into our naturalness, we're relaxed. We're not trying. You don't have to try to be a better version of yourself. You don't have to try to be more spiritual or more authentic. You have to relax into who you are. And the only way, I can't say the only way, I shouldn't speak in absolutes. One of the most powerful ways of discovering, let me correct myself, of falling upon who you are is by being alone, is by having these moments of silence and stillness so you can listen, you can hear who you are. And you can feel who you are, that is in harmony and is in resonance with the greater I am, the greater who you are in connection to all that is, the isness of life, consciousness itself, the creation of everything. And the best way to do that is to be in silence, in stillness, and just observe without analyzing, without judging, without figuring out. It's not a logical left brain experience. It's a state of, it's just being. It's just being. It's just breathing. They say that God, the divine, is the breath. And that often you find the divine at the end of the exhale, in the stillness before you inhale. That's the moment of pure bliss. And when you give yourself enough time to be on your own and in silence and stillness, you tap into those moments because time slows down. Nothing's distracting you in the same way. And now, just not opening up my phone for 2.5 days was just so glorious. Not having all of the images that are like we're bombarded by through social media. Just the stillness and the peace. My nervous system feels so good. My dreams are so vivid. It reminded me of how I used to, use my dreams in very kind of shamanic ways of asking questions and receiving answers and guidance. And sometimes they were very prophetic and just really cool, like really fun. I used to love getting ready to go to bed because I was like, I can't wait to dream and sleep. Whereas now, most of the time, we're just like trying to filter and process the clutter, and we're not even getting into our true psyche and into our superconscious, where, that's where people that say, I can't hear my intuition, I don't know the answers, I don't know what to do, I don't know who I am. It's like, because there's so much traffic in the channel. Like the pipes are totally, clogged. And right now, the battle that humans are going through on this planet is a battle on consciousness. The distraction has been made so easy. It used to be television or radio, but television, and I got rid of my television when I was 20, 21 years old, because I understood what it was. But now you have this little rectangular box in your hand. That doesn't make any sense, rectangular box, but you know what I mean. That is like having television 24/7 if you wanted it, right? It's really no different. But what's worse is actually you don't sit down and watch a half an hour episode. You watch, 2, 3, 7-second, interludes of things before you keep on swiping. So what that is doing to our brain and to our consciousness and to the channel that would be an open, clear pathway if we didn't have all the gunk in the way, it's taking our attention and it's directing it in places that are not useful, right? It's keeping us submerged and asleep, and desensitized. And I think now these questions of who am I and what has meaning and what has purpose and why am I here are becoming so much more important, because when we recognize actually that's taking too much of my attention and focus. I don't want to give my attention and focus to that. I want to give my focus and attention to being in the world and of the world. That's what I recognized when I walked to the sea and I was still in silence and I didn't have any distraction. I was like, oh, this is what we used to do before smartphones. We used to be in the world of the world. And God, it was so beautiful, just take in so much. So how does this all wrap into being alone and being single, and what women especially gain from it? Because I know I dropped that in at the beginning. So being alone and on your own gives you the opportunity to build a relationship with yourself. And that is invaluable. That is the most important relationship that you will take till not just death do you part and you part from this body, but on and on and on and on into infinity through the conscious being that you are. But it's the art of recognizing that when you are on your own, it doesn't have to mean that you are lonely, because you are cultivating this beautiful partnership with yourself. After this long walk that I took and I was listening to classical music and just sitting by the sea and watching the waves and the birds and all of these different things just of the natural world, I came back and I had just such a big smile on my face. And I wrote about it and I was like, oh, it was like going on the best date you've ever had that just left you smiling, only it's you that made you smile. It's life that made you smile. And it was so beautiful. So it's this art of sometimes we have to pass through the loneliness. And the loneliness is just the reflection. It's the indication of what part of my inner child is still not held within me. What part of my wounding still needs to be alchemized through my loving attention. Not by getting rid of anything, but through my loving attention. What still needs to be resolved within me, not so that I'm this perfect specimen, but that I'm healed and returned to my wholeness, which has always been there, but we don't feel whole when we fragment parts of ourselves. And when we're looking for the external to make us whole or to validate us. So, through my work that, that's why the inner work is so important. And I do feel like we're now at a point where we can do it kind of in quantum leaps. This is why I'm gravitating more towards doing the soul readings than the coaching. I'm still doing the coaching, but that things can happen on a much faster quantum psychic level. And we can all access this. No one person has a greater gift than the other. They just might know how to flex the muscle more because they've used it more, right? So let's talk about being single. I'm not going to lie. There are times where being single is really lonely, right? It's really hard. And I think particularly for women, because of the feminine within us that really needs to feel held, supported, that there's the structure, there's a masculine structure. And when I say feminine and masculine, it's not gender-based, but I'm going to put it in the context of being a woman. Because what I see with so many single women, and for me, I'm a single mother, so it's like a whole added layer. So for any of you single mothers out there, I'm sure you'll resonate. But even for single women that are doing everything on their own, they're on masculine overdrive. And the feminine to really be in her femininity to really surrender and open like the blossom, to not be tight in the bud, but to really let the rose blossom, she needs a masculine container. Now, many women will go very strongly into their masculine to contain that, to create that container within themselves because it's necessity, right? But it's easy to forget the qualities of the feminine or the desires and the longing of the feminine, to be soft, to be not in control, to have that wildness, that chaos, that unknown, that mystery, that the movement, the dance, the unbridled nature of just freedom, right? So when a woman is single, especially, she's having to hold everything together. Now, men might have their own version of that, but they tend to be a little bit more singular focused. Women are much more related in the sense of that's how the feminine and the brain works. It's all interconnected rather than the compartmentalized formation of a man's brain. So a man can focus very easily on his work, and his purpose is very important to him. What drives him and has meaning in life and purpose in life, if he doesn't have that, he actually won't be a very good container for the feminine, for a woman, because he's still trying to figure out who the hell am I? He's still asking that who am I question and what is my purpose? And he might need to go on the hero's journey to go through his fears and to break away from his tribe, so to speak, so that he really discovers that he's not just a boy, but he's a man. And he goes from, boy to prince to knighthood to king. And women have their own version, the journey of the heroine, you could say, which, we have a society that's like, well, everyone should go on the hero's journey. And it's like, actually, no, the woman's journey is very different, right? She needs to let go of all of the ideas and concepts and expectations and beliefs of what society has of her. And she needs to go find who she truly is. And she needs to go into the world of her emotions and into the darkness and into the shadow, into the true gifts of the feminine. So we need this time of being alone and of being single. And, I've recorded an episode on this epidemic of single women and epidemic of just singledom in general. And what I so clearly intuit, I hear it every single time I kind of tap into this topic, is we are learning as human beings to be sovereign, to be autonomous and authentic, so that we no longer go into relationships that are codependent, that are disempowering, that are based on trauma bonds and toxicity. We are healing on such profound, fundamental levels, healing our ancestry, our childhood, all the fibers and memories of our cells and our DNA. We are doing such a massive house clearing right now as a humanity. And so in that way, it's no surprise that many women and men, but it seems especially women right now, are on their own because they're coming into their worth. They're coming out of codependency. They're waiting for the relationship that they truly know that they want and that they're ready to step up and step into. And they're calling their men to rise up and be kings themselves. She's rising into the queen. I'm using these terms because that's what they're used most. But remember that words are words, and what you give meaning to is more important. So if those words don't resonate, please use your own. For some it's goddess and God. It's whatever rings true for you, quite literally. So there is this call as humans to rise into, I don't even want to call it potential and a higher frequency. It's to rise into the remembrance of who we truly are and who we've always been. But we've just been in a sleep state. We've been in the poppy fields outside of Oz for a long, 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 long time. So if you find yourself single and you feel lonely, it's part of the processing and the integration of so much that's even just beyond you, but especially, obviously, you and your story and your life. Now, I want to shift into what do women gain most especially by being single? And I'm sure men do as well, but just because of the nature of women and the way that they're wired and their emotionality, it's more specific to them. And I heard this the other day and I thought, yep, I can 100% attest to this being true. Women gain emotional intelligence. Why? Because they have to self-regulate. Because they don't have the man to fall into his arms at the end of the day. They don't have that shoulder to lean into and cry when it's been a tough day. They don't have that sense of protection and safety from the external. So whatever emotions they're moving throughout their day, they have to take care of themselves. They have to take care of those emotions. Now, not all women or men will take the opportunity to cultivate their emotional intelligence and to regulate their nervous system. They'll go into distraction. They'll go into whatever, if it's eating food or, being on social media, or there's an addiction to dating apps and going out on dates all the time. They will run away from the time that they have on their own to cultivate this healthy relationship with themselves and to cultivate healthy emotional intelligence, right? If the witness isn't there to observe, oh, what are you running away from right now? And there's no judgment in that. I have no judgment towards those that find themselves in that. But what I would invite you to do is to recognize, why are you running? Why are you distracting? Why are you numbing? Why are you reaching for the food or the phone or constant sex that's meaningless and whatever it is for you, without judgment. But women most especially can cultivate that amazing emotional intelligence when it's like, okay, I have to sit here and be with my feelings. I have to feel them. I have to integrate them. I have to process them. I have to understand why they're here. What are they telling me? What are they communicating to me? Without judgment, without getting rid of, without segregating and severing and fragmenting, but bringing it all into the lap of love, into the feminine mother that can hold all things and transmute them through her love. And I can just tell you that having been on this path since being a teenager, so over 20 years, it's one of the greatest freedoms. There's a lot of things about my life. So let me give you a personal just example of this. When I was triggered on Saturday, and I compared myself and I compared my life, and it was against this one person, but also measuring myself against society. And this person kind of is very successful in all areas of what society would measure you by. And so I went into this, well, I'm a fucking failure. This is pathetic. I pity myself. I don't have, I don't own this and I don't have that and I'm not in a relationship. No, all of these things that normally I don't care because I don't want to be a part of society as it currently is. There are things about the society as it currently is that I don't admire its characteristics. I'm here to create a shift. I want to be more in tune and in alignment with nature, with being authentic, with not needing to strive and produce and all for the money and the hustle and it's just not me. It's just not me. And it's very hard to build a business when you don't want to hustle and it's also very different. How it was 10 years ago is I just authentically expressed myself and I put videos out and I was on the first page of Google. And now it's like, you need to be a content creator and a, marketer and an SEO specialist and all of these things. Anyway, I digress. One of the things that a dear friend of mine said as I was comparing was, but Corinne, you have something that most people, and she said everyone that I know, would kill for, is you are so comfortable being you and expressing you. Like that peace and that naturalness that you have in you. And your ability to express yourself authentically without fear. That is something that a lot of people don't have. Now, these are her words. I'm not saying this is wow, look at me. Yay. I'm not whatever it's called, blowing my own horn and my own trumpet. But I really received that. And the thing is that even when I was in that comparison, my higher self was saying that. She's like this, your life hasn't been to be successful in the eyes of society. When I was younger, it felt like I was being groomed in that direction. I was being told, oh, you're going to be the next prima ballerina. Or when you were a choreographer, I was being compared to Martha Graham and all of these things, or an actress, or an amazing writer. Everything was like on this real large scale. You're going to be amazing in the world. You're going to be famous and successful and rich and all of these things. And, I'm so thankful for the belief that people had in me, but it also was a pressure, right? But my higher self was like, but that's, you were touching upon those things to recognize that wasn't actually going to bring you happiness, fulfillment, or peace. What has brought me peace is not just understanding or innerstanding, as a lot of people are saying now, but the comfort of being in myself, in my inner world, of exploring all nooks and crannies and feeling like, you know what, no matter what comes up, I'm okay. And the love that I've gained for myself. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I still have moments where I'm lonely and I don't want to be single anymore. And I want to be in partnership and to be in a team. But I also don't want to just be in a relationship for the sake of being in a relationship. That actually takes a lot more energy and it's very exhausting, and you don't get to sleep and wake up when you want to. All of these things that, actually like enjoy the things that you get to enjoy being single, So for me, and it's just my story, it's not yours. We all have our own path in this lifetime and there's no right or wrong. Some of you might resonate with this, some of you might not. It's totally okay. But for me, my journey has been obviously one that's like, no, you're really going to spend a lot of time this lifetime in your internal world. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to share. You're just going to talk about it. I'm not preaching. I'm not teaching. I don't ever consider myself a teacher. If anything, a guide. I'm just holding the torch to show you the way if you choose to walk that path as well. And if you do choose to walk that path, I'm here to support you in it. But I can only lead by being authentically me. And for me, understanding authenticity meant I need to go in and really unveil who am I on all levels, as a personality, as an ego, as a human, as a soul, as a spirit, as consciousness itself. And it just reminded me, reading Richard Rudd's book, The Gene Keys, this process, exactly that process, of you need to go in and learn everything about yourself so that you can let go of it all and just be. Just be. And I found that place of being to just be the most peaceful, fulfilling, enriching, nourishing, loving place that I've ever embodied. It's really, truly home. So the invitation is to come out of this feeling that being on our own is sad. And that's not to say that there will be moments where we feel sad, and that's totally okay. There'll be moments when we're pissed off. There will be moments where we're fed up and we're angry. It's okay. All of it gets to be included. All of it. But there's also this beautiful opportunity to cultivate the most amazing relationship with yourself. And what I mean by most amazing is just that you truly are in the embodiment and understanding of know thyself. And the communion that happens and the divine that you can tap in to by doing that. When you are in silence, when you're in that space where you're really within and with yourself, and especially when you're taking in nature, both outer and inner, there is a direct highway to the divine, God, source, universe, creator of all that is, whatever you want to call it. You feel it. It's not something that you need to know in your mind. It's a feeling that you know as a state of being, a remembrance, a recognition of, because you are that. And it's so exquisite. And it's so easy to get caught up in our lives. I have this week to myself and I haven't gone in the car. I haven't gone anywhere. I've just wanted to be in the stillness of my own company. But when it all starts up again and I'm in mother mode and I'm driving on the motorway 2 times a day in crazy traffic, it's very easy to forget. But that's why take the moments that you can, the pockets of time that you can, to be silent, to be still, to be with yourself, to turn off the phone, to look away from the screens, to not pay any attention to what's happening in the world. It doesn't make you a bad citizen. It makes you a good human because you're connecting to the truth of who you are, to the truth of all that is. And what I mean truth, it's the isness of existence. I'm not talking about truth of facts and dogmas and, politics and no. We're going much, much deeper and much, much higher, right? And this is what's needed right now. If we want to change the world, it's not about winning an argument in that kind of very third dimensional realm of argument, of the politics of being human. If we are truly evolving and ascending, which isn't really about becoming better, it's going back home. Everything is it's the fractal of everything is inside everything else, right? It's the expanding out to come back in. It's all interconnected. But these pockets of time to be in stillness and quiet and silence and to be with yourself, they're going to be the most profound, just even moments that you can give to yourself and that you can experience. And it will change you. It will change the very fibers of your being. And then you will perceive life differently. You will show up differently in life. We've had thousands of years of distraction, being pulled away from ourselves. This is the returning home. This is the homecoming. If you're stressed, if you're overwhelmed, if you're tired and exhausted, it means you're very far outside of yourself. Come back home. And I understand that not everyone has 2 days to go into silence on their own. Normally I don't. Normally I don't for months. But I now will go, okay, when I put my daughter to bed and I have those few hours before I go to sleep, I'm going to choose silence. I'm going to choose stillness. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful, folks, when you can fall into that place and go, oh, this isn't lonely. This is so full of life. It is so damn beautiful and nourishing and cozy and warm and relaxing because you fall into the naturalness of who you truly are. And it's simply divine. Quite literally divine. It's not just metaphoric. So there are probably several invitations in this today, but the most basic invitation is to take time for yourself when and where you can, to redefine and understand the difference between being alone and loneliness. And if you're single, take advantage of it. And yes, there will be days and phases where, like I said, you'll be sad, you'll be angry, you'll be fed up, you'll be frustrated, you'll be lonely, you'll hurt. It will be fucking painful. Keep on coming back home to yourself. There's a reason for many of us being in this space. It's not because something is wrong with you, with us. It's because we're actually doing profound work here if we choose to do this consciously. Cultivate your emotional intelligence. It will make your relationships so much better, so much easier. I cannot tell you. The moment you have emotional intelligence and you know how to communicate, everything is figure-outable. And we learn also in true partnership when we're looking at it from consciousness, from a conscious partnership. So many relationships fall into argument because it's them against each other, rather than you are in a partnership and in a team. And when there's a challenge, when there's a quote unquote problem that arises, it is you two looking at and facing and handling the problem or the issue, the challenge, right? You're not enemies. You are in a union partnership. That is what true relationship is. But if we don't know how to do that within ourselves, how are we going to do that with someone else, right? So of course, as within, so without. So it's okay to feel the moments of loneliness, but also take advantage of the time that you have to be with yourself, to learn more about yourself, to heal yourself, to love yourself, to do the things that bring you joy, and to really cultivate the wisdom that is already in you, to allow it to unfurl and unfold and blossom into a full embodiment of who you are. And then the relationship will come. Might take a bloody long time, but it will come. It will be there. But we're all stepping to the next level. And I don't mean that in hierarchical ways, but it's just, just like a plant grows and reaches new heights, we're no different. So I'll leave it at that. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you. And loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.